My name is Brandy. Standing here in the aftermath of the most explosive family event I've ever experienced, the air still crackles with tension. The once elegant private club where my brother's so-called debt-free doctor celebration was held now feels like a battlefield. People are still whispering, their eyes darting between me, my family, and the now silent slideshow of my brother's life. It all started on an ordinary-looking morning in my parents' kitchen in a small, well-to-do suburb of San Francisco. I had just finished an overnight shift at the local coffee shop and was still in my tattered sweatshirt. My mother, a cold and calculating woman, slid a folded note across the counter without even making eye contact. I was filled with a glimmer of hope, thinking maybe they had finally recognized my hard work. But when I opened the note, there were 2 single-dollar bills and a sentence in my father's sharp, angular handwriting: "Figure it out yourself. It'll make you stronger." I stared at it, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. My brother and we had both graduated from medical school. Same degree, same family name, but the difference in treatment was stark. My brother, Ryan, was the golden child. He was 25, full of charisma, with a laugh that could light up a room. People were drawn to him like moths to a flame. From a young age, it was clear he was the one my parents favored. When we were kids, if Ryan scored a goal in a soccer game, it was a huge event. My parents would take pictures, post them on social media, and take us all out for a fancy dinner. But when I won a science fair, I got a pat on the back and a request to heat up leftovers. As we grew older, the gap between us only widened. When Ryan turned 18, he got a brand new sports car with a big red bow in the driveway. 3 months later, when it was my turn to turn 18, I got a planner and a lecture about being practical. My mother, always the one to rationalize their actions, said I was mature enough to understand that not all gifts needed to be flashy. My father, a stern and business-minded man, told me that character mattered more than luxuries. But in reality, it was just a thinly veiled excuse for their unequal treatment. In college, we both got into top pre-med programs. I thought being away from home would change things, but it didn't. Ryan called our parents every time he was stressed about a class, and they would immediately send a tutor, extra money, or even come to visit. When I called, I got a lecture about how I was strong and could handle it. I worked multiple jobs to pay for rent and books. I learned to stretch a tank of gas as far as possible and knew exactly which grocery store marked down produce on Tuesdays. Medical school was even tougher. Ryan struggled in some of the foundational courses, and my parents paid for private tutoring and expensive prep courses without hesitation. When I scored high on the MCAT using second-hand books and free online resources, my father just nodded and said, "That sounds like you." It was never a real congratulations, just a dismissal of my hard-won success. I carried a mountain of debt into medical school, while Ryan entered with a much lighter load because of our parents' financial support. But I was determined. I made coffee at 4:30 in the morning before lectures, took detailed notes that my classmates borrowed, and volunteered for extra clinical hours to get strong recommendation letters. Then, I met Dr. Amelia Reed. She was a force to be reckoned with. She could walk into a chaotic trauma bay and bring order without raising her voice. The first time I worked with her, she asked me a series of tough questions about a patient case and waited patiently for my answers. When I finished, she gave a small nod and said, "Good. You're actually thinking, not just performing." That one sentence hit me harder than any compliment in years. Dr. Reed saw my potential and gave me more responsibility. I helped with a research project on improving emergency response in high-risk trauma cases. For the first time, I felt like my hard work was paying off. But my family dynamic didn't change. My parents still focused all their attention on Ryan. They attended department events where Ryan would shine but barely acknowledged my achievements. Dr. Reed noticed this, and one day, while we were reviewing data in her office, she asked me, "Has your family always mistaken neglect for confidence in you?" I laughed nervously and then said, "Yes. That was the moment I stopped pretending that everything was okay. As the end of medical school approached, Ryan was about to have his big debt-free celebration. The morning of the event, I got a message from Dr. Reed. She asked me to come to her office before noon with some news. I drove there, still carrying the $2 and the note in my bag, hoping it would somehow make sense. When I arrived at her office, her assistant greeted me with a smile and said, "Congratulations." I thought she had the wrong person. Then Dr. Reed walked in with a folder. "Brandy," she said, "you've been selected for the National Clinical Excellence Award, and the Hospital Foundation has approved a loan repayment grant tied to your trauma research. Also, the residency track you ranked first wants to offer you an early leadership position." I was speechless. It was like years of locked doors were finally opening. Dr. Reed then told me that I was invited to Ryan's celebration, and that my parents were trying to impress important people for him. She said, "If they use this event to present a false version of what's happened, I'm not going to sit back and let it happen. I'll correct the record." On my way back to my car, I got a text from Ryan. He wrote, "I know tonight is weird. Please don't make it tense. Mom's already emotional, and Dad wants this to go smoothly." His message confirmed what I had always suspected but never fully admitted. He knew the situation was unfair, but his first instinct was to protect the event, not me. I texted back, "I'll be there." The rest of the afternoon was a blur. My mother sent me a photo of the table arrangements and reminded me to dress nicely. My father sent a message about how important this event was for family pride. No one asked how I was or if I had any good news. When I arrived at the private club, it was a picture of opulence. The host stand had a gold-framed sign with Ryan's name and the words "Debt-Free Doctor." The room was filled with candlelight, white flowers, and a slideshow of Ryan's life. My mother kissed my cheek and immediately asked me to talk to a server about the vegetarian place cards. My father was introducing Ryan to department leaders, acting like he had single-handedly created Ryan's success. Ryan looked good on the surface, but I could see the tension in his eyes. When he saw me, he gave me a half apology, half plea for peace. I didn't return his smile. Dr. Reed arrived 10 minutes later, looking elegant in a black dress. My father rushed over to greet her with exaggerated warmth, thinking she was just another guest to boost the event's prestige. But I could see the moment he realized she wasn't going to play along. Dinner was called, and the seating chart said it all. Ryan was at the head table with my parents, department chairs, and a hospital donor. I was placed at a side table with extended relatives. Everyone pretended not to notice the hierarchy, but it was painfully obvious. After the first course, my father stood up with a champagne glass and started his speech. He talked about sacrifice, family, and pride, and how proud they were to give Ryan a debt-free future. Then he said, "We always knew which of our children needed a stronger foundation, and tonight we're proud to say we gave him one." A few people clapped, but I felt a cold chill in the room. My mother took over and made it worse. She described Ryan as the one who carried the family's future, while implying that I was self-sufficient and didn't need as much support. Just as the applause was dying down, Ryan stood up. He looked trapped. He thanked everyone for coming and then said, "There's something about tonight that doesn't feel right to me." Brandy and I crossed the same finish line. She worked just as hard, if not harder, than I did. There were murmurs in the room. My father tried to brush it off, but Ryan continued, "I'm debt-free because you paid for it. I didn't earn it the way everyone here thinks." The room went completely silent. Then Dr. Reed stood up. She spoke in a calm, firm voice, "Since honesty has entered the room, it's time to share the full picture. Brandy has been awarded the National Clinical Excellence Award for her work on trauma response. The board has approved a major loan repayment grant for her research. She's also received an early leadership offer from the top-ranked residency program. Randy has achieved all this while financing her own way through a system that favored others. The room was in shock. People started to turn towards me, their eyes filled with new respect. My father tried to backtrack, saying they were proud of me too, but it was too late. My mother tried to make excuses, but Dr. Reed cut her off. There's a difference between believing a child is capable and using her silence as an excuse to overlook her. Guests started coming towards me, asking about my research and future plans. Ryan found me near the windows. He said, "I'm sorry." And then he said something I had waited years to hear: they supported me more because it made them feel needed, and I let them. I looked at him and said, "Yes, you did." My parents were left trying to salvage their reputation, but the damage was done. Over the next week, their social standing started to crumble. Colleagues and friends distanced themselves from them. Ryan and I started to rebuild our relationship. He began making decisions on his own, without relying on our parents' approval. My parents tried to come back into my life with gifts, but I knew I needed distance. I moved for residency and started building a life that was truly mine. Looking back, I realized that strength should be nurtured, not exploited. Independence should be respected, not punished. And I finally learned that my value doesn't depend on my parents' approval. I've found my own path, and I'm ready to face the future on my own terms.